The story begins in the year 2000 when a report reached the police station of El Doki about a murder in a certain area. The team, along with the chief of detectives, quickly headed to the apartment where the crime occurred. Upon their arrival, they found a large crowd gathered in the street and an ambulance carrying away one of the injured, Karim, the son of the murdered couple. He had been stabbed in the stomach and was unconscious. Talat, the chief detective, then saw the two bodies being removed and recognized the father and mother. They had both been brutally stabbed to death. He also discovered that nothing had been stolen from the apartment and that there were no fingerprints found except for those of Karim, the father and the mother. The bodies were transferred to the forensic department for autopsy, and the investigation began with the people in the street. They stated that the family had been living in the building for a long time without causing any trouble, and that they owned both the building and a piece of land in the countryside. However, no one visited them except for the village guard who came at the beginning of each month to deliver the land's revenue. They had no other relatives. The investigation extended to the neighbors, who confirmed that nothing unusual had occurred before or during the crime. They hadn't heard any sounds of someone entering the apartment, screams or signs of struggle. However, Hadi, the son of their neighbor Sama, who was present during the investigation, mentioned that on that Friday night he was staying up late due to his father's illness. While in his room, he heard a knocking sound coming from the apartment where the crime took place. He didn't pay much attention to it and didn't hear anything else afterward. The investigation with the residents of the street and the neighbors concluded, and Talat went to his office to contemplate the case. He assigned an officer to search for any relatives or acquaintances of the victims, and also placed guards at the hospital where Karim, the son, was admitted until he regained consciousness. Talat learned that Karim was a graduate of the Faculty of Fine Arts, lived with his parents, and was engaged to his college classmate, Rahab. Talat summoned Rahab and her family to inquire about the parents and Karim. They stated that Karim was Rahab's classmate. They were in love, and his parents were highly respectable people. They expressed their sorrow for what had happened. When Talat asked Rahab about Karim's relationship with his parents, she described it as very normal. He loved them, and they loved him as their only son. Talat then asked her about Karim's relatives or family, and if she had ever seen any of them. Rahab replied that she hadn't seen any of his relatives before, and when she asked Karim about them, he said he had none, and that his father had never mentioned any to him. Karim's relatives were all gone, and the investigation continued until the forensic report arrived, stating that the death occurred the night before the report, between 8 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. Talat then summoned Bayumi, the doorman who reported the incident, and asked him how he discovered it. Bayumi recounted that every morning he would bring the newspaper to the father and hand it to him. On that day, he knocked, but no one answered. He was sure they were inside, but assumed they were asleep and went down. In the afternoon, he went up again and knocked, but still no one answered. He became worried because no one had come down all day. He then used the spare key he had to the apartment in case the family was traveling to go in and clean. Upon opening the door, he saw the bodies. He said that Karim was still conscious at that time. Bayumi ran to inform the police, who arrived and asked Talat if he had seen anyone entering or leaving the day before. Bayumi said he had been sitting in front of the building all day and hadn't seen anyone come or go. The building's door was locked at midnight before he slept, and no one would leave or enter after that. Talat became more perplexed, not knowing who to suspect or where to start the investigation. He decided to wait until Karim regained consciousness and ask him what happened, hoping it would help the case. He informed the hospital to notify him immediately when Karim woke up. After 10 days of investigation, Talat and his assistant, Badr, had not made any progress. However, they learned that the father, Shadid, had a brother who passed away 5 years ago. His children had all migrated abroad, and his wife was no longer in Egypt. There had been a severe conflict between Shadid and his brother over inheritance, leading to lawsuits, but Shadid won the case and received his share. After his brother's death, they received a call from the hospital informing them that Karim had regained consciousness. Talat and Badr went to the hospital, where the doctor told them that Karim was lucky because the stab wound in his stomach hadn't affected any vital organs. He had regained consciousness, but wouldn't be able to speak for 2 days. 2 days later, Talat sat with Karim in the hospital room. Karim was devastated and crying. Talat comforted him for his health and offered his condolences. He told Karim that he understood the difficulty of the situation, but needed him to recount everything that happened so they could bring justice to those responsible. Karim then narrated that it was an ordinary day, and he was in his room drawing, planning to create a museum to display all his artwork. He heard a knocking sound at the apartment and went out to see what it was. He found 2 masked men dragging the bodies of his father and mother, trying to put them in a corner. When they saw him, Karim said that the shock paralyzed him, and he couldn't do anything or scream. They stabbed him in the stomach and then left the apartment. He crawled towards his parents, losing and regaining consciousness repeatedly, unable to bear the pain. He woke up once to find someone opening the apartment door and recognized Bayoumi. He then succumbed to the pain, feeling like he had died, but he turned out to be alive. He started crying, saying he wished he had died after his parents and that he wouldn't be able to live without them. Talat calmed him down and said he would leave him for now and return to continue the conversation when he recovered. Talat documented everything Karim said and went back to the station with Badr to discuss the case. Badr asked what the motive of the 2 men could be for killing the family without stealing anything. Talat replied that the murder wasn't for theft, but for revenge against the family. The question was, who wanted revenge and why? And the more important question was, how did they enter and exit the building without anyone seeing or noticing them? Badr suggested that they might have entered from the roof of the neighboring building, as the buildings were close to each other, making it easy to climb onto the neighboring roof and then jump onto the roof of the building where the family lived. They could then enter, finish them off, and leave the same way. Talat agreed that it was a possible scenario, but he would still wait for Karim to recover and hear his description of the people so they could find any leads. The case remained pending until Karim recovered. After a month, Karim was able to leave the hospital and return home. Talat and Badr visited him again at the house, and Karim explained the events of the incident as they happened, crying as he described it. When they asked him about the descriptions of the 2 men, he said they were dressed in black, but one of them was tall and sweating, while the other was shorter. Talat asked if his father, Shadid, had any enemies, but Karim said that since his retirement, he hadn't left the house. He was a general manager in the Ministry of Irrigation, respected by everyone, and had no friends or enemies. At that moment, Karim, Talat, and Badr heard a knock at the door. Karim opened it to find Bayoumi standing there with a postman. Bayoumi congratulated Karim on his recovery and offered his condolences. He then said that the postman had a letter for him. The postman asked Karim to sign for it, and Karim opened the letter, which contained a paper with the words, "Thank God for your safety," written on it. Below that it said, "Father" with a cross mark next to it, then "Mother" with a cross mark next to it, and then "Rahab." Karim took the paper and showed it to Talat, who then asked the postman who sent the letter. The postman said it was anonymous and that the letter was simply placed in a mailbox with the recipient's address, and his duty was to deliver it. Talat asked Badr to try to find out who sent the letter. Karim kept telling Talat that they would kill his fiancée, Rahab, but Talat assured him that the police would provide her with protection and that he shouldn't worry about her. Talat went back to the office and requested that guards be assigned to Rahab's house and Karim's house. He kept thinking about the letter. Later, he received a call from Karim saying that he had received another letter. Karim received another letter that said, "Whatever you do, you won't stop fate. Try to enjoy what will happen." He told Talat that he was afraid something would happen to him and his fiancée, but Talat assured him that he wouldn't abandon him. However, Talat was internally conflicted and didn't know what to do or how to handle the situation. Then, Badr came to him and said he had discovered something important. On the day of the crime, Bayoumi, the doorman, wasn't present in front of the building. He was getting married, which Badr found out by chance because Bayoumi's wife had recently filed a complaint against him for assault. Talat sent a police officer to bring Bayoumi in. When Bayoumi arrived, he was scared, and Talat became angry and accused him of lying. Talat said that Bayoumi was the first to discover the crime, and that it was possible he had committed the murders to steal something and then fled when he didn't find anything. Bayoumi became frightened and confessed that he hadn't killed anyone and would tell the whole truth. He explained that 2 weeks before the incident, he had decided to get married and agreed with the woman he was marrying, to tell his wife that he was going to Alexandria to deliver money to someone and would return the next day. On the day of the crime, he locked the building's door and took the woman to Alexandria, where they got married. He spent a day with her there and then returned. That was the whole truth. Talat released Bayoumi and told Badr that it was possible that someone entered the building while the doorman was away, which would explain how the perpetrators entered. Time passed and Talat and Badr tried to find any information about the people who committed the crime or who was sending the letters to Karim, but they didn't find anything. One day, Karim came to Talat's office holding a letter that contained only one word: beginning. Talat didn't understand what it meant. At that moment, Badr entered and told Talat that something had happened that he needed to know about. Rahab's family had filed a missing person report in the Sahel area, stating that she had disappeared 2 days ago. Talat asked how that was possible with the guards at her house, but Badr explained that the guards said Rahab had left for work and they had accompanied her to her workplace. However, she hadn't returned, and when they went to her studio, they found it locked. When it was later opened, no one was inside. No one had entered or left the studio while they were standing in front of it. Talat immediately formed a search team to look for Rahab throughout Cairo, and a bulletin was issued with her description, asking anyone who found her to report her location. Meanwhile, Karim was sitting at home when he received another letter that said, "To God we belong, and to Him we return." He went to Talat, who assured him that nothing had happened and that they would find Rahab safe and sound. However, Talat received a call informing him that Rahab had been found murdered in Mokattam. A taxi driver had found her and reported her location to the police before leaving. The body had been stabbed in the same way as Karim's parents. When Karim heard the news, he fainted and was taken to the hospital. The doctor said he had suffered a severe nervous shock that caused him to lose consciousness, but he was fine and would stay in the hospital until they were sure of his condition. The next day, Talat went to Rahab's family's house to offer his condolences and ask about what had happened and if they had received any letters. They felt they were being targeted. Talat sat with Mohammed, Rahab's father, and offered his condolences. He asked if they had received any threats or anything strange, but Mohammed said no. Talat then told him that Karim had fainted upon hearing the news, so he couldn't come. Mohammed replied that it was better for him not to come, which surprised Talat. Mohammed explained that Rahab had broken off her engagement with Karim 2 months ago due to his behavior. Talat was surprised and asked why they hadn't mentioned this when he questioned them after the first crime. Mohammed said that Rahab, may she rest in peace, had refused to say anything because of Karim's situation and that it wasn't the right time. However, the engagement had been broken off due to many problems. Karim had been pursuing Rahab everywhere, going to her workplace and trying to convince her to get back together, but she had refused because he lacked ambition and still hadn't found a job. She had offered him a job at her studio, but he refused, saying he hated drawing and didn't want to work in that field. Talat was shocked by everything he heard and left, thinking about what he had been told. He reviewed the case files again and found in the forensic report that the bodies hadn't contained any poison or sedatives. He focused on the time of the crime, which was 8:30 p.m., and the fact that the doorman was in front of the building then. As he had said, he locked the building's door at midnight. Talat contacted a doctor friend of his and asked if it was possible for someone to keep bleeding from 8:30 p.m. until the next afternoon. His friend said it was impossible because the person would have died from blood loss. Talat was surprised because that was the time Karim was supposed to have been bleeding from the time of the crime until its discovery. The story became confusing for Talat, and the case became more complicated. He told Badr about everything he had learned. Badr said they needed to investigate Karim because he was the puzzle in this case. Badr began his investigation into Karim. A week later, Badr came to Talat and said he had discovered important things. He found out that Karim wasn't well liked in college and had no friends since childhood. There was a restraining order filed against him by a woman named Fairuz El Sanan. They learned that Karim had loved Fairuz in his first year, but she didn't see him as a partner and told him the truth. However, he kept following her everywhere and threatened to kill her if she didn't marry him. Out of fear, she filed a restraining order against him, and Karim disappeared from her life. She got married and traveled abroad, returning a year later, and didn't know anything about him. Badr also found out that Karim had gone to register the land and building in his name after hearing about Shadid's will. After hearing all this, Talat decided to visit Karim at his house. When Karim opened the door, he was surprised to see Talat, but welcomed him in. Talat said he was passing by and wanted to check on him. Karim thanked him and asked about the case, but Talat said it would likely be closed as unsolved because they couldn't find any leads. Karim was saddened and asked Talat what he would like to drink, but Talat said he didn't want anything, and instead wanted to see Karim's drawings because he loved art. Karim said all his drawings were in his studio, which was under construction, and he didn't have anything at home to show him. Talat mentioned the painting Karim was working on the day of the crime and said he wanted to see it. Karim became nervous and said he had thrown it away because it reminded him of the incident. Talat laughed and told Karim that Fairuz sent her regards. Karim asked who Fairuz was, and Talat replied, "Fairuz El Sanan, the one you used to love." Karim became even more nervous and told him to forget about her, saying he had intended to propose to her, but it didn't work out. Talat then asked Karim to come with him to the police station because he wanted to talk to him, and it wasn't appropriate to talk at Karim's house. Karim went with him, confused. When they arrived at the station, Talat sat with him in his office and asked why he hadn't mentioned that he had broken off his engagement with Rahab due to problems and that he had been going to her house and harassing her. Karim became flustered, and Talat told him he wanted to know everything and would keep him detained until he spoke and confessed what had happened. Talat said he suspected Karim of killing his parents and his ex-fiancée, Rahab. Karim became angry and denied the accusations. Talat called for an officer and ordered him to take Karim into custody until he calmed down. Badr was present in the room and asked Talat what if Karim wasn't the killer, then everything they were doing was wrong. But Talat said he was sure Karim was the killer and would confess, but they needed to pressure him a little. Talat started bringing Karim in every day for interrogation, applying psychological and emotional pressure until one day, Karim said he would confess everything. He said he hadn't killed his parents because the people who died weren't his parents. He then recounted that Shadid was a very stingy man who had deceived his brother and caused him to die of grief in order to take his share of the inheritance. Some time ago, Shadid's brother had suggested selling their land to invest in a project, but Shadid refused, and they argued until Shadid got fed up and revealed that he wasn't Karim's father. He said he had adopted Karim from an orphanage when he was young and that Karim had no right to anything.